Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to part 3 from Schalk on our Local First series. And thanks very much for joining us if you are on a Friday evening. Thanks for that. As usual, we're just going to get our quick things out of the way, which is to thank our sponsors who help us bring this to you. First of all, KRS, who've been sponsoring us for the last year or so. In particular, they sponsor our newsletter that goes out every 2 weeks when we share interesting information in the front end and design space, as well as job posts, open positions, and some recaps of our previous online sessions. So you sign up for that. If you aren't already, we will share links and so on throughout the talk. And then we've had 2 long standing sponsors for many, many years, NML and IO, who help us to, bring you these live sessions via StreamYard and so on. And then just one other thing to mention is that DevConf will be represented at this year's DevConf. Venter will be represented at this year's DevConf in both Cape Town and Johannesburg. We'll have a stall there, and we've got some cool stickers and things. So please come by and say hello if you're going to be at this year's DevConf, Cape Town and Johannesburg. All right. So part 3 from Schalk. We've already done parts 1 and 2, so a whole nice series happening here. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to put Schalk on the screen and we can get going. Thanks, Schalk.
Hey, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Perfect.
All right, so let's get into it. I don't want to spend too much time going on random tangents on Friday evenings. Everyone probably has better things to do, so let's get into it. Okay, first things first. Someone told me I should call the talk "Local is Lekker," and yeah, shout out to you, Ron. I appreciate that. So but before we talk about that, just quickly, this was never meant to be 3 actual talks. This was meant to be a single talk, and I think there's 2 reasons for that. I think going into this, I knew that there's just a lot. It's the more you dig into things, the more things you uncover. The second part is that with the demo, I still haven't finished it. I can show the progress I've made. I think I have some of really interesting parts of it where it kind of starts resembling an actual working thing, but it's never meant to have gotten this big. I think I started out being let me just do a little basic to-do app. And then I was surely, you won't be able to kind of do assets like images and stuff. And I was playing around and I was cool, you can actually do that. And I was okay, but surely you can't have several nested levels of data structures, so teams who have projects in them that have tasks in them, and in those tasks there are comments, and these comments are assigned to specific members, and you can go and edit your thing and whatever. And I never kind of hit a wall where I was crap, how I don't know how to do this in a local way. And and then it's okay, but surely you can't do authentication, and kind of ended up there was a way to do it. And this has been a very interesting experience for me, because I think I've been trying to push this to such a ridiculous degree that as it's just a fun exercise, there's no way I would actually build something like this in production, i.e. actual entire task or project management piece of software that is purely backed by a single JSON file or something, but I think it's I think I was expecting to at some point just hit a wall. That's this is just too ridiculous. There's no way to make this work. And it turns out you can get really far. I think I haven't even touched the ceiling yet, because I can just keep on working on it and adding more things. So, okay, but before, that's a Lekker thing to talk about. But before that, let's talk about things that are not Lekker. All right. So, 20 October 2025. I've mentioned this before, but I think it's worth reiterating this again. I woke up and it was time for stand-up. Not lekker. Okay? I went on Slack and Slack was offline. Also not lekker. Then I thought like, okay, probably not going to have stand-up. That's all right. That's not that bad. So let me maybe work on some tasks I have pending. And in order to do that, I had to access some things that were sent to me on Slack, obviously blurred just for. Whoa, I didn't see that transcription. Oh well, okay, that's cryptic enough. That's not breaking any NDAs.
Yeah.
But so obviously, I had to act like, so this is kind of like some bugs and stuff that some customers and whatever sent, and so that was 3 days ago. Turns out I couldn't access a message that was already sent to me 3 days ago because I don't know, Slack wasn't working. Okay, so retroactively, like, you guys probably know what happened. It was kind of like the first kind of like domino in this massive cascade of just like cloud providers just like falling over in this scope of like 4 months. But I mean, like, that's sure, I guess Slack is gonna be Slack. No offense to Justin Slack. So like, you don't necessarily expect the best of Slack. I mean, like just in terms of the memory usage of Slack alone. So it's like, okay, cool. It sucks. This is something that like I should be able to access offline. Like, there's no reason I need an active internet connection to read a message I've already received 3 days ago. You'd have thought like, okay, maybe like all those 3 things that are not lekker would have been enough to be like, okay, I'm just going to take the day off. But no, I got another thing I wasn't lekker. So we use this thing, and I don't want to name and shame, called API Dog, because it's an amazing service, and I'm scared they're going to tell me I can't use it anymore or something. So no shade to them, but like I couldn't really do anything else because even like, so this is literally all this is a GUI on top of our Open API file. So we just have our kind of our entire REST structure and whatever documented in an Open API like text format, and this is just a GUI on top of it. So you can kind of search and you can do whatever, and it couldn't work without AWS. And there's literally nothing. There's no. I don't even really know why they need AWS. There's literally just a viewer on top of an Open API file. But anyway, so then I kind of went and, like, you started getting like these little bits of info that, oh, there's like a massive cloud outage and whatever. And you kind of go and look and see, okay, there's actually a lot of stuff that's just fallen over, including like the Standard Bank app, actually. So I think the entire Standard Bank crashed. And so turns out there was one thing that wasn't. My favorite pastime. So I went on LinkedIn and I kind of just started shit posting about the internet being down. And so why am I telling you all of this? Well, I think the first thing is like I try to really squeeze in this concept of local is lekker. And this also gives me an opportunity to also use the phrase be lekker, don't be a DNS. Okay. All right. So because of that, I think like a couple of minutes after this, I guess out of just pure frustration, I said like, you know what? I think this is the final straw. I think I'm gonna submit a DevConf talk. And yeah, I haven't done 2 years now. I haven't done DevConf talks because like I had my second daughter, and yeah, it's a bit of a tough one. And so then people started reacting and saying like, oh, actually do it. And I was like, oh no, oh crap. And I think I was like, okay, it's still all right. Like, surely the team at DevConf isn't gonna accept a talk like about me like shit talking like cloud providers or whatever. You know, they have a lot of cloud provider sponsors or whatever. Well, it turns out they accepted my talk, so I guess I had to do a lot of research now about local first, which is also kind of the reason for the series, because yeah, I had to spend a lot of dedicated time actually digging into it and making sense of it in preparation for my talk. So the reason for the series is to kind of share like kind of some of the findings, because I think there's a lot of stuff I uncovered that won't fit into firstly a 40-minute talk, and also you kind of also have to cater it to people's experience and so forth. So there's a lot of stuff that I can discuss in these sessions that I wouldn't be able to discuss in the talk. So welcome to the last part in the series. Okay, super quickly. So who am I? I don't have a formal background in tech. My background is actually in visual arts. And I think similar to like Justin, I kind of was at the right place at the right time, and ended up kind of, I don't know, ended up in tech somehow. And yeah, I think as part of that, I've been like the place where I've kind of learned most everything I know, and because it was kind of through community stuff. So obviously you guys know FedSA. I kind of also ran CodeBridge with JD for a very long time, a couple of years, and then also I kind of was an admin on ZA Tech for like more than a decade. Until I eventually stepped down, and also been involved in a lot of open source projects, like contributed to it. Also kind of have a storied background in teaching and the education world. Taking a bit of a break from that at the moment. The whole AI thing is, I don't know, it's not a fun space to be in. And then obviously just like do a lot of commercial work as a consultant and a freelancer. So that's kind of who I am. So kind of live in the northern suburbs of Cape Town with my wife and my two daughters. And on the right side here is just like kind of what kind of my ChatGPT history kind of looks like. So you have abstractions over Elm monads and debugging array buffers in JavaScript, and then in between that you have how to braai wors when the wood is wet. So that's just kind of like a general like kind of experience of being a developer in the northern suburbs. Also talk quite openly about kind of like my history with mental health and
And we seem to have lost Schalk's connection. I'm just going to see if I can get hold of him. Okay, everyone, we've lost Schalk. Let's just hang on a couple of minutes and I'll see if I can get him back. Otherwise, we'll probably have to reschedule, but let's just hang on a bit. In the meantime, you can join our Discord. There's a QR code. I'll leave that up for a couple of minutes. That can be scanned, and that will take you directly to our invite link for our Discord. And we've also got a newsletter. I'll put that one up in a few minutes as well, just to give people some time. Here's Schalk. Great.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, I wish I could say that I did that on purpose. to kind of illustrate the point that
Yes.
we shouldn't take like internet connectivity and access to the web as a given.
For granted. Yeah.
Yes. For granted.
Yeah, I was just chatting away about our
Okay.
Discord while you were away.
Nice.
You'll have to
Right.
reshare, Schalk.
Okay, cool.
You'll have to reshare, yeah.
It's weird, man. Like whenever I don't know, it's so strange when I talk about the mental health stuff now that it dropped. There's also both times I did talks, both times I did talks on mental health, like there was also like power out, like ESCOM power outages and stuff. Like it's like the universe does not want me to talk about mental health. So with that in mind, let's move on.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, you can get in touch with me almost anyway. Sorry. Yeah, I'm recovering from flu. Sorry about that. Okay. So, sorry. All right. Okay. Justin, you have been around in 2004, right?
Oh, yeah.
You've been using the internet in 2004. Huh?
Yep. Indeed.
Do you feel that development has gotten easier since 2004, less complex?
No.
Okay.
It's become more
Big
complex.
Surprise. Big surprise. Okay.
But
yeah, I said that,
one thing I will say.
Oh, here we go. Talk's about to get ruined. Let's do it.
No, not at all. This was way simpler. However, getting that onto a public-facing URL was way more complicated.
Yeah.
So yes, development has gotten way more complicated.
Okay.
Infrastructure has become much easier to work with. Yeah.
Let me frame it. But I think that's a very good point, and I think that's something I want to touch on. Is that because the infrastructure has gotten so good, and there's reasons for that. The first being that you can make a crap ton of money from selling infrastructure. If I'm not mistaken, AWS makes more money than Amazon at this point.
Oh yeah, way more. And
yes.
And Azure is fast becoming Microsoft's biggest money earner.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So, okay, nice segue. But so I should have also framed it better. I should have asked, has front-end development gotten easier? And I think most people would say no. All right.
No, it's just it's got increasingly complex, and it continues to get increasingly complex.
And oftentimes like that, and the reason why I want to like start with this head on is because I think a lot of times what I've found with myself and listening to other people talk about local first and so forth, this is kind of the main, I wouldn't say criticism, but the main concern that is kind of raised is that like we can barely manage state and complexity as it is right now. Now you want to bring in all this local first crap as well. Now I need to make sure the stuff can be accessed like without a connection, and I need to so first and foremost, now I need to think about replication. Replication is an awful problem. It sucks. It's probably, I think, the biggest reason why I think we've kind of like why the cloud-centric model has been so successful is because you kind of effectively reduce having to really worry about replication. You have a central piece of data, and I don't really care what Justin is doing on his device. I don't care what Schalk's doing on his device, and Schalk's computer versus his phone versus this other person who has edit rights and this person who has viewing rights. And like, you don't have to worry about replicating the data between, there's a central point and everyone, the central point on the cloud, and everyone just like, that's the source of truth. And so I think I've kind of like preempted myself a bit here because I shouldn't have really even leaned into local first yet. I just wanted to talk about this concept of, like front end has increasingly gotten significantly more complex. I would be very surprised if anyone tells me they think it's gotten easier. So then the natural question is, cool, so how do we make it better? And like go and ask that on Hacker News, go and ask that on LinkedIn, go and ask that on Reddit. Like, if you like starting a conversation about like how complex front-end development is right now and who's to blame and what we should do to make it better is never a fun conversation. Okay.
No.
But that generally, I found that there's four kind of streams of thought, generally speaking, in terms of like what to do with that. I think the first is kind of like, like a bit of a, this is fine. So maybe it's a skill issue. Like, it's only complex because people aren't good enough. Or more often than not, I think people don't necessarily think it's a problem as broad in scale. I think there's a lot of times people kind of really like limit it to discussions around specific tooling and whatever. Like, oh, the problem is React. React has made the web so complex.
That's right. Yeah.
Or if only we could go back to jQuery. Or like the only people who would say that would be people who've never built anything of substance with jQuery. Like, I don't want to go back to jQuery. Or like, okay, if everyone just uses Svelte, or if everyone just switches, like that would reduce the complexity. And like I don't necessarily. I've mostly used all of these frameworks, and I don't really think that's I think the complexity isn't something that's related to our tooling, I think. If anything, I think our abstractions have removed a lot of the complexity. I just don't think it's been able to remove enough of to keep up with the growth in. Like, I wouldn't want to be building the type of things we're building today without something like React. Okay.
Yeah. But
I think like a lot of the people there who kind of like blame specific tooling or say you should use Svelte or you should use this or whatever, like there's also a certain subset which is kind of like we should actually go back to like how we did things in 2004. And I find like a lot of that is kind of, you find like that kind of sentiment in kind of like the HTMX kind of like fan base and all the permutations of HTMX, like I can't even remember what the stuff is called, but like the Laravel specific one and the Rails specific one and so forth, which is like this idea that like we should actually just go back to servers and having the servers do everything. And like I think even if that was true, I don't necessarily think that we would. Yeah, even if that, I think like that still leaves out a ton of other things. Like, okay, like what about mobile apps? What about desktop apps? Like stuff wrapped in Electron, something like Slack. I think that's a very myopic view of what we like, of like the type of software that we build. Sure, I think like there's stuff that some like general CRUD stuff that you can just run and feed everything from the server, but like a lot of things is like you have a mobile app version of it, and whatever. So, and I think also I think that I also think that like there's also something to be said about the expectations of users. Like I really like HTMX. I've read the Hyper Objects book. It's a phenomenal read. I just don't know how scalable it is across big teams, because you're effectively very tightly coupling. Like if you want to change, you have to now make changes on the server, but anyway, like there's a reason also why like decoupling your front end, your back end allows you to scale, not only scale but also like have a mobile app and a desktop app and a web app and whatever read from the exact same source of data. But anyway, and like then I think on the flip side to that, we kind of like have this push to server components, which is kind of like the inverse of that, which is like instead of saying we should go back to a time where the backend managed the front end, this is kind of the inverse, where you kind of like you take this component model that we have on the front end and you kind of push it all the way back in the stack up to the database. And I think I understand the thinking behind it, and I like theoretically the kind of idea of it, which is effectively you are effectively just treating the actual infrastructure as closures. So you have your like as the code flows through like your levels of infrastructure to the UI, like those are closures, and you can only access things in that closure. You can't go back out again. But it's just clear that it's just like too complicated for the average person. Like I've seen some stats around kind of like how people actually end up using React. And there's not nearly like the level of adoption of server components, despite all the security concerns and whatever. And I think this is also like what kind of like the TanStack start stuff. What's driving a lot of that is that like the general people aren't actually that keen on server components, and like it kind of feels like Vercel and Next kind of trying to force it a bit down people's throats. Okay, so then like there's kind of like a fourth approach, and then these are kind of just very broadly kind of patterns I see in terms of how people think we should address this. And then this is a kind of a recent one, and that is like that 2004 is actually not far back enough. We should actually go even further before this guy ruined everything for everyone. All right. Okay, I'm obviously being a bit facetious, but like, I mean, like, this is kind of where a lot of the problems actually started, is that he built this thing called the World Wide Web that he effectively like envisioned for academic documents.
Yes,
but it ended up being
but
it ended up being so versatile and so, what would be the word, resilient, that people started using it to ship software, which was never his intention. So, like, no shade to him. But, like, I think this is where all the trouble began. So, let's quickly just chat about that. So, if you don't know who this is Sir Tim Berners-Lee. He created effectively what we know as the modern internet. And the first website, no, come on, Candace. Not now. Okay, let me just close my... Okay. Okay. So the first website he ever created is still online. You can go to it. It's still there. It's insane. Like, like think about what can you still run? How much software how much software that, think about like Windows XP era, okay? How much software from that era would you still be able to run today? Okay?
Very little. That's not
even
like
further back than that. Even like Windows 95. This is kind of like Windows 3.1 era. The fact that this was created in the Windows 3.1 era and you can literally still use it exactly the way it was designed and intended to be used today is insane. This is unprecedented in software.
It was 1991. I mean, that's like 35 years ago.
Yeah, I can barely run stuff from 10 years ago still. I need some emulator or whatever. This is wild. Okay, so the thing is, like, his vision was just like too good. But as mentioned, like the problem is it was meant to be like for text documents. And I think like also like, you've seen this quote, right?
I know this one. Yeah,
this one is
Nobel
amazing.
Prize winner. Nobel Prize winner.
No, you ruined it for me because I wanted to be like, who's this clown?
Oh, sorry, Schalk. I saw it when you accidentally went forward. Sorry.
So he said by 2005 the impact of the internet will be less than that of the fax machine. I was like, who the hell is this clown? Well, only like one of the most prestigious economic, Nobel Prize, and like, look at all these awards. Okay, so I think it's fair to say no one even expected this thing to really be as big as it is. So and like in how the internet happened, it's a fascinating read. Kind of Brian also talks about kind of people looked at this as a toy for kids and whatever, and it generally was. This is kind of what the web looked like. One of these might be my site, or it might not. But there's one here in the bottom right from this guy, and this was his about page. So you might know who this is.
Heard of him.
Just give me yeah. Sorry, my daughter just came in. Cool. So, but I think the main thing that changed here is Web 2.0. And I think this is where the trouble really started, because people started seeing like this web thing is really good, and we can actually start shipping software through it. So, this is the first time, like kind of in print magazine, 1999, like this concept of Web 2.0 was kind of first formulated. Just give me a quick second, guys. Okay, yeah, I don't want to go through like all of this, but and like effectively, like the whole Web 2.0 thing was so successful that sorry, just give me a second. Okay. To the degree that most everything now has some integration with the web in one manner or another. Okay, sorry, my kids are just... Lera, as jy hier wil sit, moet jy stil wees, okay? Okay. Yeah, like, and so, like, I think effectively, like, so now we're stuck with this thing that's super powerful, that was never meant to be this big, that was never meant to be used for this purpose. And this is the type of stuff we're building with it. Okay. Guys, as jy gaan stil wees en met julle uitgaan. Sorry, just give me a quick second. I'm back in a minute.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. Oh, sorry about the noise in the background. Okay, so, and, so, sorry, now I need to get my train of thought back. So, I think this idea of shipping software through the browser like really took off, and I cannot overstate like how much this took off. Like, I mean, like, look at like these are kind of like the combined valuation of like all the like SaaS companies. Look at that massive spike all the way up to like 21. And what ended up happening there is kind of like we got kind of the bubble bursting. So there was definitely like this massive SaaS bubble where everyone was just turning their products into SaaS products, like ridiculously. Like I think we're only realizing now, and now people are talking about the SaaS apocalypse, where I don't know if you've heard about it, Justin.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. And so people usually blame, because like you have just all these SaaS products like folding. And I think a lot of people blame AI because, oh no, you can build your own software. You don't need some SaaS thing, in which I don't know, I'm not convinced. But I think the main thing is it's still, like compared to like 16 or 15, like it's still up. It's still a massive increase, like within the like almost like 400%. It's just like it was just like we went too far and now it's correcting. So it feels like now it's just crashing, but it's just like correcting to where it should. It's actually
more a normalization. Yeah,
it's a normalization, exactly. Yeah, and so for those of you that don't know what SaaS is like it's effectively you're shipping your software through the browser, effectively. or through the internet. So instead of actually getting the software and running it on your machine, you are running it effectively on someone else's machine. And, like it gets sent to you through the browser. So the appeal of that for companies is that you have tight control. Like you can effectively, so you're effectively like ransoming, ransoming, like their usage or their data. So, like if you have to pay a monthly fee, and if you stop paying, you can't use this anymore. Whereas, like look at Photoshop or whatever, you'd buy that. But like one of the appeals of this is because the software itself was on the cloud instead of on the local device, is that you had the centralized place and you can connect to it from anywhere. And you don't have to worry about replicating data between different devices and whatever. The problem with that is there's several problems with that. And I think this is where the local first kind of movement starts coming in. I think the first thing like that a lot of people have, that's a big problem for them. And not like, I don't know, it's not that big of a problem for me. If I have to be real, maybe I'm just too cynical, but like I think a lot of people don't like really want to like kind of really what would be the word, like push a bit more for kind of data ownership, because the problem is like if everything's in the cloud, you don't own that data, and the moment that service shuts down, like that's gone. So if Adobe goes bankrupt tomorrow, good luck. There goes all your, if Figma goes bankrupt tomorrow, all that work you've done in Figma, cheers. Okay. Well, not even that. Let's say Figma bans you. That has happened to some big people on GitHub for the most strangest reasons, but it's not, like they can just ban you. Or let's say you live in a country that, now it gets tariffed or sanctioned or whatever. So your usage of the software is dependent on not only the software, but the data that you created is up to the company to decide whether you can still access it. So effectively, they're effectively selling your data back to you if you want to take a really cynical approach, which is why a lot of these services like provide like a very, very gracious like free tier or free period or whatever. And then once they have enough of your data, you have to start paying to still be able to use that data or have access to your own data. But there's degrees of that. Some of them let you export it and whatever. But it's a very lucrative, I mean, like look at this. It's extremely lucrative, like this business model. But I do think general sentiment is also kind of turning a bit against like the subscription model. But anyway, so one of the big benefits of that was kind of like this multi-device thing that I was saying. Whereas, traditional software, generally it would be confined to the device. And if you want to share it, you'd have to mail or Dropbox Photoshop documents around, like final version 2 and final, really final version 3 and whatever. So yes, exactly. So SaaS effectively solved that problem where, because you don't have the data on your side, that's not a problem, because wherever you connect from, like, it's going to be the same data. You're all going to work on the same Figma file and so forth. Okay, so I think if I were to take a very generous approach to the problem at hand, I would, or what would be the gracious approach? I don't know, generous, gracious. I would say that at the very least, there's definitely a problem here of going too far. I think we've kind of pushed too much stuff into the SaaS. Tried to push too much stuff into the SaaS world. Like so on 20th October, kind of we saw that with kind of like the 8 sleeps bed thing, where it's like, why does your bed need the software running your bed why does that need to be hosted on AWS? And why does your bed break if you can't connect to AWS?
Yeah.
And also, like, this is actually, and I didn't even seek this stuff out. This is like obviously stuff that came over my like feed or radar or whatever, and then I was like, oh, okay, this is very topical. Where Rian van der Merwe, he shared about 6 months ago that he has a Logitech MX Master mouse, and the certification of the domain expired.
Wow.
Yeah. And
That is
like I
crazy.
commented, oh, what? You need a cloud connection to use your mouse. What is this? This is like 8 sleeps level of cloud codependence. Yeah,
No.
so like we've definitely gone too far. Like I mean, the moment where your mouse stops working if you don't have an internet connection, that's a bit ridiculous.
That is,
I think
wow.
like
Yeah.
even if you strongly disagree with a lot of the stuff I say, at the very least, I think you have to concede that I think we've maybe gone a bit too far, and there are some pieces of software here that maybe we need to rein it in a bit and maybe start thinking about, okay, maybe like the cloud shouldn't be the pivot upon which the software breaks or works. Okay. Yes. So then I have some more stuff, some more notes that's not slides that I want to talk about. And then I'm going to talk about the app and I'm going to show some stuff.
Okay.
I just want to check if there's any questions or anything before I...
Nothing yet. Nothing yet, Schalk.
So I did see there was
I think we might be speaking with each other.
No. Well, maybe. I did see there was I think a comment that someone posted beforehand that
On
I really
LinkedIn.
want to address. Yes.
I'll grab it. I'll grab it for you.
Yeah. Which I think was a really cool one. All right. So we might be speaking with one another only, but for the moment now. So hello from the past if you are watching this in the future, this recording. Okay. So I think before I get into this, I maybe like in terms of my own recommendations of I think good places to start if you're curious about local first and so forth is a really great JavaScript jabber, Carl Simpson. Yo, he's done a couple of them. Okay, let's find the local first one. And the reason why I find it so fascinating. Yo, how many has he done? Okay. Is this the one? Yes. The reason why I like this is so great. I'll share it with you. I highly encourage people to check this out. I'll share it with you, Justin.
Nice.
Is that because I think this is one of the few kind of discussions about local first that I've listened to or read, or where the other people on the show really push back really hard against the idea, which is really great. Like I really appreciate that because I think first and foremost, like a lot of those concerns are valid, and I think there's some nuance to the discussion here. And I think the other thing is as well, there's a lot of misconceptions. And it's only by raising criticism and saying like this doesn't make sense or whatever that we're able to actually even talk about that. I just think this is really a great place to start, especially if you're skeptical, because I think it like the whole conversation is extremely skeptical of this idea. And I think he makes a really good case. And I kudos to him. The other one is DevTools FM which is also like a great podcast in general, with Peter. So he worked at Heroku.
Yes.
And then kind of like he started working at the company that's doing Automerge now. And he talks about like how his experience at Heroku has kind of like informed his interest in local first now, specifically in terms of, because what happened is Heroku like kind of had this very generous free plan. It was so easy to deploy things and whatever, and you had this entire ecosystem of apps and whatever. And then obviously when Heroku decided, okay, we are actually no longer going to provide the free plan, you just like all these apps, all of this deployed stuff just disappear overnight because the free plan was gone. And I think he mentioned it, there was a specific recipe app that he used. And it just like, it was also obviously on a Heroku free plan as well. And like it was just gone. And and like it's such an interesting discussion in terms of kind of like he's effectively saying he's atoning for his sins of making the cloud so accessible by now kind of pushing back against it. Cool. So I just want to highlight some things from this conversation with Carl Simpson, and I'll try and keep it quick. And like these are literally just like I just downloaded a transcript. So I think one thing that he kind of mentions is that at least a third to a half of the internet users live in parts of the world where internet is not an unlimited asset. It's a constrained resource. So I think people tend to think in terms of dichotomies. Like they tend to think of like, oh, okay, me sitting here with my trillion meg fiber line compared to someone in the Amazon rainforest that has no reception. But there's this massive spectrum in between of people that do have access to the internet, but it's constrained. So whether it's constrained because of some factors in terms of they're at a very rural area, or they're like, I don't know, in the sky, in a mine, under the ocean, or wherever, or in a tunnel, or on the train, or whatever, or it's constrained in terms of just financially. Data cost in South Africa is ridiculously high, and I've been working with a fiber company recently who's been like kind of making a lot of inroads into kind of like a lot of the lower LSM like markets and stuff. And what's fascinating to me is the amount, like, so the amount of data that gets purchased is astronomically skewed to like people purchase like 3 rand or 5 rand or 2 rand or 10 rand at a time. So people would buy like 30 megs, or which is so interesting to me because obviously I actually buy prepaid. I don't have a phone contract, but like I would buy like a gig at a time or whatever, and it's interesting seeing like people like, I'm literally only buying 2 megabytes of data right now. And so like I think that's something we take for granted. And what's very interesting is, and this is a direct quote from Carl, it's been said various times before that spotty or intermittent internet is considerably more challenging problem for developers and users than just having no internet at all. So the fact that it's the spectrum is actually more challenging than having users that have no internet and having users that just have like unlimited internet. And I think like a lot of like, I think living in South Africa, I think this is something we acknowledge, that like having a fiber line and having unlimited access to the internet, like even just being able to watch the stream right now, and me being able to stream, is massive privilege that's not afforded to the majority of the population. I mean, if you were to look at like the socioeconomic markers, like our country is predominantly skewed to like the poorer side, unfortunately, and it sucks. And like I don't want to paint this kind of like in an optimistic manner where it's like, oh, there's this new market that haven't been tapped into or whatever. It sucks. Like people shouldn't be this poor. But I think at the very least, like we shouldn't make the software that poor people use suck even more. I think at the very least we should just strive to not like make it suck as bad. Okay. And like, and so there's this concept, like when we think about people using the internet, like this is what we think about, which if you were to look at the actual data is not reflective. Like this is not the average, definitionally. And so like I don't want to go into this, but this is also part of the transcript where and this is once again what I appreciate about the podcast is like they really push back on it, and so they push back on something that does make sense, which is like, okay, cool, is there value in actually building software for people that don't have this level of internet? Like, do they even have money to spend? Like, are they actually viable customers? Like, would you be able to actually convert them into paying customers? And like, and effectively, like, here's a nice quote, which is, I think it's a hard sell to talk with a legitimate startup trying to be profitable and ask him to spend all this extra time to do something non-standard with effectively no battle-tested playbook, which is what local first is. It's not the standard at the moment, and it's still a space that's not codified, and people are still figuring it out. And so that does make sense to me, and like I understand that. But I think like also Kyle raises a really like good. He has a really good response, which is like he says that like having constrained internet access isn't necessarily even something that's always associated with like socio-economic realities. There's a like if you think about something like scuba diving or scuba diving. Oh, sorry, skydiving. Oh, I guess scuba diving also works. Scuba diving. So both of these, the two divings, like these are hobbies that are undertaken by people that it's quite affluent people that do this, and like there's companies that run these things that you need to take, like probably like there's some information you have to record. There's some stuff, and then when you're back up or you're near Wi-Fi again, then you sync it or whatever. Like I have a friend who's in marine research. He goes to Antarctica for like 6 months at a time, under mines. Like people like working like like in far out places and whatever. And these are big industries. I think we overemphasize how much of the economy is actually just like office workers like us. And these are big industries, like with big companies that spend a lot of money on tech and IT infrastructure. And like then there's the classic, if you want to go really far out, I have 2 versions of Outlook and neither of them are working. Okay. So for those of you that don't know, this is from the Artemis mission. And
amazing.
I think what's ironic about this is that this would have not been a problem 10 years ago. So chances are, if you're using Microsoft Outlook in space, it's not because you're real-time sending emails to people right now. I can't imagine you being like, okay, Houston, can you send that to me in an email? Okay. You are probably looking at something that was emailed to you a month, a week, or at a previous, probably a PDF or something that was mailed to you and you want to access it. The fact that and what ended up being the problem is the latency. Obviously, a latency from space to Earth is just the connection just times out. But having that prevent you from actually even accessing things like, because Outlook has really been one of these that have kind of like really pivoted to the SaaS space. Whereas Outlook was previously something you had on your computer and you sync. Now it's kind of, once again, it's a SaaS thing. You log into Microsoft Office 365 and so forth. So we've kind of like almost like unsolved a problem that was solved. Interestingly enough, yeah, and I know that so PowerSync, and I know this because I know a lot of the guys at PowerSync, is like this is actually their biggest market. And you'll see that also in the way their service works, is like for these big construction companies, like people like big companies doing stuff like that's kind of like outside of traditional like a mobile range or whatever, and there's a lot of money to be made in that space. And I know like some of their biggest like customers are these, you'll see like a lot of it's like mining companies and whatever, if you go under the ground in a mine and whatever. Okay, So the other thing as well is also something to be said for just like spending less money on AWS or whatever, you know. And I think like local, this is kind of something that's being this is a discussion point that's being surfaced by the local first folks, but there's a lot of other people also kind of like, I know like DHH and the guys at 37 Signals and so forth, they are also like questioning kind of our reliance on the cloud and so forth, but from a completely different perspective. Like they're kind of more interested in actually, can you run the stuff yourself and so forth, and can you save money doing that? But I think like there's a general consensus that that graph, once again, like maybe we've gone too far, maybe we've put too much stuff in the cloud, and it getting way more expensive now than it used to be. And so now let's get to the point that I wanted to say, which is, cool. There's all this complexity, and now you want to add local first as well. It's like, oh crap, I have all this complexity that I have to deal with, and now I have to think about local first as well. And this is something I've experienced, and like this is also something that Carl highlights is. So I think the question to him was, is it not well established that stage management is more difficult on the front end than on the back end, since there are more things you are not in control of that can go wrong? State management is a nightmare on the front end. How can we justify all the additional state management problems added by moving more logic to the device? And like, I definitely agree with him here. I would say that first and foremost, a tremendous amount of the current complexity in modern front ends are directly related to mitigating the drawbacks of the cloud-centric model. So I think if you have a cloud-centric model and you go with a classic like HTMX approach, where it's like you click a button, a new screen loads. You type something, submit it, a new screen loads. You move a card on Trello, the screen reloads. If you go with that, I think if you can build that type of app, that's the sweet spot. I think like then sure, have the server manage everything. Everything is a request through the server sends back a new page. Okay. The problem is when that's the infrastructure you have, where everything's on the server, but you want to pretend that it's not. So now you do all these caching, you're caching all this stuff, you are kind of doing optimistic updates, you are doing all this clever stuff to, putting things on CDN so they're closer to the user. Like you have all this complexity just to hide the fact that there's the data that you're working with right now is not here with you. It's somewhere else. You're trying to obscure that fact and mitigate the drawbacks of that. And I think that's where the complexity comes. So I think if we just say that, and this is kind of my point about the replication, is that replication is really hard. And we're going to talk about that now in a moment. Replication is not an easy problem. And I think the appeal of the cloud-centric model is that you don't have to worry about replication. You don't have to worry about, we have data here, we have data there, we have data here and data there, and they're out of sync. And how do we get them into sync? And what if you edit it here, but someone else edits it here? How do you resolve that? Think about like a merge conflict, like it's a hard problem to merge conflicted data. And the cloud kind of gets rid of that. You never have to worry about that. But I do think that if we want to do that, then we just have to accept that, cool. Like if we want to, we need to lean into that and design our app around that. Or I think a lot of the complexity is that like we as an industry is kind of in this in-between space where we want it to feel like software. We want it to feel like the software of old, before the internet, where you clicked on something, you had it immediately accessible, you moved something, everything happened instantly. But you have all this chatter going on between the front end and the back end. And, you have all this asynchronous complexity. And, that's the big problem. You have stuff where something happens, there's a delay. Now you have to, what if it comes back? What if it comes back wrong? What if you do an optimistic update and then it comes back and you have to roll back and whatever? So I think you just kind of like introduce different types of complexity. And so for me, I think taking the complexity of replication to get rid of all that other type of complexity, I'd rather just pay this upfront cost of dealing with the complexity of replication and then not having to worry about any of that. I think that's what I find most convincing, because that's a cost you pay once. You solve the problem of replication once, and then everyone, all juniors, all interns, whoever's working on this project, never have to worry about how to get the data to the place they're right now. They just query your local DB. They just make changes to the local DB, and the sync engine manages that relationship. No one is ever sending HTTP requests, waiting for it to come back, figuring out when to show a load spinner, what if it fails, all of that stuff. Okay. So, and I think like this is a lot of my thinking around this is also influenced by The Goal, which is a book I reference a ton. And like it's also like this concept of you should front load your constraint. Like you can't remove complexity, and if you try and hide that complexity, it's going to seep in. You know, it's this concept of like the law of leaky abstractions. It's going to leak in places. So rather just front load it, deal with it up front, and then have all the other things follow from how you've dealt with that like constraint. And this is how I feel about like moving data back and forth. Okay. And so as mentioned, you know, like replication is not fun. It's not easy. To quote Carl, we now have sophisticated synchronization engines, CRDT mechanisms. While there's a lot of complexity about merging changes in live dynamic systems across various devices, there's also a lot of different trade-offs that you need to make. However, a lot of people building these tools right now have a ton of experience architecting and managing these types of systems in-house or even completely on the back end. Furthermore, they are building tools and abstractions that expose these concerns in much simpler and perhaps more familiar ways to you and me. So I think like I wouldn't recommend anyone to build their own sync engine. I've done it. We've had some products where we've used our own sync engines just because like there wasn't services that really offered this type of thing. And when we switched over to one of these tools that were built by like some of these smart people, like just the performance is just astronomical, because a lot of these things are written in like Rust and WASM, and written by really smart people who know a lot of like computer science and know a lot of like mathematical algorithms and stuff. They can just give you something that's way more resilient and way more performant than you will be able to cobble together with JavaScript yourself. And I'll maybe list some of these now in a second. But the point being that like not only do we take this replication thing that is a really hard problem, but we also, I think more often than not, you offload it to some like a service that deals with that problem for you, and you just work through an abstraction. Okay, you know, in the same way that like you know, we don't really need to know what happens underneath TCP or whatever. We just work with HTTP protocols. And it's the same principle here. Like you take the sync engine, you don't even know how it like does the replication between the database and the front end and whatever, how it keeps all these devices in sync. You just pay the money, get the thing, you can self-host most of this, and then that's a solved problem, and you never have to worry about HTTP requests, you know, caching, like loading spinners, whatever. It's just going to figure out what you need and have it be available. Okay, and so there's also this thing about like, okay, sure, this is there is a cost here too. This is still nascent and it's not widely accepted, but there's also a lot of like value in terms of being early movers in this space. If we think about like Airbnb and we think about Netflix, I think they were very early movers in kind of like the SaaS world. I think Airbnb, both of those, but specifically Airbnb, was one of the first really big non-Facebook adopters of React. And I would probably say that I think a lot of Airbnb success is because they were one of the very first big companies to use React. When React was still like super messy and hard to use and whatever, because like, you know, like by the time that other people started using like React or whatever, they already had like this really mature code base that was super interactive, where you could do like real-time searching that worked like a single page app. Whereas most other like kind of reservation type sites, it was your traditional click, load, see a new photo, see a new photo, type a comment, enter. You know, so I think there's something to be
And they were the first to kind of utilize that technology to explore different interfaces that gave them a big heads up to like having it. Drag around a map, immediately get locations and all of that, all immediately.
Move around the map. 100%. Okay. And that's not even like talking about the actual people that are doing the actual renting, the actual owners, like the dashboard they have on their side. Okay. But okay, so all of this out of the way. I want to quickly show the app. And so like it's still a work in progress, and I think most of it is purely just because I didn't anticipate that I would be able to get so far with it. So most of this is local data. So look at all the stuff I've built.
Wow.
So I know. So okay, so the dashboard. So this is what I have for the dashboard. So you can see all the recent activity. Add a new project. You can see your projects. You can view all your projects. Here's the teams. You can add a new team. You know, you can toggle between. Okay, I'll show the interactive one now in a moment. Members, all of this stuff. Here's your projects. And so I'm still busy building it, but I have a slightly interactive version of this working already. This is all just local data. Where is that? And this is also the thing about testing, you know, like when you're testing with like Storybook or whatever, if you're using local first, it is so easy because it's all just data. You don't mock any, there's no like endpoints that you mock or whatever. Like it's just like you just pass the data in, and it doesn't really care how it got that data. That's amazing. It just makes it so much easier just working with mock data as well. So then the actual, so I'm busy working on like kind of the members list, the projects list. So this is the project page. So here's the tasks and whatever, search tasks, filter by priority, have your own tags. Say like who it's assigned to, sorting, all that stuff. And then, so this is okay, so let me first show the shell. And then I want to talk about some of the principles, especially around authentication and whatever. So here's an interactive version. Where, no, did I break it? Okay, never mind. Like you can just instantly toggle between the different teams. And you'll see the 21 members. So this is just the shell. And I'll show now in a moment. And also like mobile is also, no, mobile's not working. Okay, but so this is generally what it would like if you open it and you just get this.
Cool.
So I want to talk about the complexity here, because you might look at this and be like, flip, man, like how many hooks is this, you know? Like loading this data from the server and whatever, and you know, toggling between this and you know, and that as well. And then like, so the other thing that I was really impressed by is this, you know? So check this out.
Oh, love it.
You can literally search any of the data. So let's say, is anything red? Fred, okay, so there's one member. There's 5 tasks with the word red in it. Let's try yeah. Okay, there's 5 members. You know, LL. You know, look at this. This is instant.
Yeah.
And this
Very,
is a
very
lot. This is a lot of
Of
data. This
Yeah.
is like not like. Let me show you the script that generates the data. So, look at this. So, yeah. So, okay. Let's actually push it. Let's push it even more. So, let's say we want between 10 and 20 teams. Okay. And then in that we want between, let's say, let's go 10 and 20 categories for each team. So this is now multiplied. Then each team has let's say 10 to 20. Let's actually go even more. Let's say 10 to 20 teams. Let's say each team has between 20 and 40 people in it. What is this? Team ID, active member, new array, int. What is this building? Mark member, array, inner member.
Yeah,
oh well. Okay.
What's your model?
Anyway,
model?
Yeah, I can't even remember what this is doing. Okay, I think the easiest way to really push it to its max is let's just actually create a crap ton of teams. So let's say
because that'll automatically add the users, right?
Yeah. So let's say we want between 200 and 300 teams. Okay.
Sure. Okay.
This might actually crash, but it might crash because the script that generates the mock
the script rather than the app.
For real.
Yeah.
Because
No, for sure.
that uses plain JavaScript, whereas see, like now it's completely frozen. I think it's building the data.
No,
whereas the other stuff is using like WASM and whatever. So where's that search now? Search overlay. Okay, so let's try it. Look at this.
Sure. Yeah.
This is 300 teams with their own members, projects with tasks in it, with comments, with attachments. Yeah. See if there's a John. There's a lot of Johns. Search for a V. Yeah. Look at this. And obviously, it just shows the 5 most recent matches, but it's instant. Like there's no debouncing whatever.
Yeah.
And let me show you how.
There's no loading icon.
Look at this. So, where is it? So where's the logic for that? That would be search container. Look at this. Okay. So all I do is I do search overlay container. Okay. I literally just have this search and set search. This is the input. Okay. Zoom in a little bit. Okay. Then I say do a live query. From my collection members. Where so this is just for case insensitive. So I like X label. So where the label matches the current search term, limit it to 5 and order it by this.
Descending.
Yeah, same here. Like that's all I do. And then I just feed that into the component.
Amazing.
And this is insane. There's no Redux here. There's no nothing. It's just I just give it the collections, and I'm like, search these collections. Just get the stuff for me from the collections, and similar to like a use effect, you just tell it what to listen to. So when this changes, rerun the query.
Yeah.
And so now I want to talk about the shell as well. So what's interesting, like most of the complexity is now in the actual, like just building the UI.
Yeah.
Like look at this. Like how do I show the teams? How do I show the members?
Yeah.
How do I show if it highlights a match? Like look at all this complexity, like just HTML and CSS. This is the
Where's
actual logic of the search.
Yeah.
So okay, so then another thing as well is, so talking about the shell. So like, let's look at, so this is the props that it takes. Okay, so we have just like whether the shell is open or closed, all the teams, okay, that it should show, and then also like just marking whether, so it's an array of teams, just saying like the one that's active will just have active true. Same here with project, okay, and then how many members there are in total, and then the current like active member, the current active team, and the current page that's being shown. Okay, so if you look at the actual container for that. Okay, so here, so this is the stuff I'm just getting. So the session stuff, this is just a Zustand store. So just go. This is literally just a Zustand store that just keeps track of like, you know, because this like, so I think like the main thing is you like when you start thinking about, you know, local first and so forth, you make a distinction between like your UI state and your actual underlying data, you know, that you're working with. So obviously the UI state is in Zustand. So that is like, okay, you know, is this thing open? Is this thing closed? Who's currently logged in? Whatever, which is very different from the actual underlying data. So effectively, I just query literally like there's a single hook where I just query everything I need. Oh no, there's actually two hooks. So there's two live queries. So just one where I get all the teams. So I just get the teams, and then I just select and I just like modify. I add this active to it, just like where I match as I'm querying them. I'm just like adding this active. Okay. Then most of the and then just the active user as well. The same here. I just say, okay, get me the ID of the current active user, and just select it and just find one. Okay. And then, okay, so then this is where most of the work happens. I say, okay, get me all the teams. Find me the team that matches the current active ID, team ID. Okay. Once you get that, return an object where the active, you just put the active team in there. But then I want all the members. So get me the members collection from this team that you just found. Like, find all the members that match the ID of this team that was just selected. And then, you know, just give me all the IDs back. And then same here. So you kind of nest your queries. And then effectively, like, then this is just what I pass in. Like, look at this. Here. Yeah, this is what I pass in. Just like data. Like this data is just what I get from my query. And if you look at this, you might start seeing this looks quite a bit like GraphQL.
It does a bit, doesn't it?
And this is the thing that eventually clicked for me. And they actually mentioned it in the recent TanStack DB 6.0 also, I think like in that conversation, Kyle and them also like kind of mentioned it, is that local first and things like TanStack DB and so forth, like I think fulfill the initial promise of GraphQL. And the initial promise is that you would just treat your data fetching in a declarative manner. You just say, what do you want and how do you want it structured? You would declare, I want this, this, this. I want this to match this. I want it to filter by this. You wouldn't be writing actual either JavaScript logic where you're like, okay, filter this, then map that, then find this thing, then sort this thing. Or you wouldn't be orchestrating. So the same here, you know, if you were to orchestrate this thing with a server, this is like, I've worked on stuff like this. Do you know what a massive like URL this thing would be? You'd have you know, you'd have like members, and so you'd have to construct this flipping thing and then send it to the server, and you'd be like sort by whatever. But then also, if someone presses another key, if they change the search while this is going, you have to now invalidate this, and you have to. You're spending like all your time just all managing this relationship with the server and sending things and getting things and when to show a loader and whatever. And so I think like the initial promise of GraphQL is that like data would just be this declarative thing. You would say what you want, and it would just be there. But the problem is, and they actually talk about it here, is the problem is that because GraphQL, once again, wanted it to feel like the data is right here, but it's not. It's actually somewhere else. Now you have all this complexity. If you think about Apollo, so Apollo was meant to be like this plug and play GraphQL thing. But now all of a sudden you have all this other crap around like caching rules and who knows what, an Apollo server, and even your types come from the server. You can't even create your own types on the front end. And but like, so, and I think like also another thing is that this also gets around a lot of the problems around performance with GraphQL, because you're not actually querying the database. And so because you're able to, because you're subscribing to data, like TanStack DB can very intelligently figure out what is the part that changed in your subscription and only update that little part instead of sending a completely new query up again. So I probably want to start ending off here. So we are close to an hour and a half. I just want to quickly mention. So there was that question. I did see there was a question about authentication.
I've got it for us.
Yes, and everyone always asks this.
And so when I pasted it in, it was so long it had to go over 2 comments and stream it out.
Okay, let's do it.
I'll just put the first one on.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Most decentralized demos collapse under the complexity of isolating user data without a server. How are you handling permission boundaries when there's no central source of truth to enforce them?
Okay. So instead of sending permissions around and saying who has access to what, you just send the data around. Okay?
Yeah.
So like, because there's no centralized, okay. So what I'm actually doing is, so if you were to do a very naive implementation of this, you would like go on, where is my app now? Oh, so much stuff running. Okay. If you were to do a very naive implementation of this, like back to like the Evernote era or whatever, you would just, in settings, have like a export team. Oh, look at this, 5,000 members. Look at all this stuff.
That's right.
Look at this. And where's the? Sorry, I know you need to head out, but this is amazing to me. Like just how performant all of this still is. Look at this. Pew, pew, pew,
it's crazy.
400, 300, like 300
teams.
300 teams. Yeah.
Oh, that's nuts, man. Can you do a quick search on that? I also want to see now.
But that's what I just did now.
Is that there? Okay.
Yeah. So let's search for AA.
Yeah.
Let's search for LI.
No, that's nuts, man.
But obviously it limits it to 5. So it stops searching once it finds 5. Yeah,
but it's still searching that entire.
Yeah.
How many teams? 300.
Like this should actually show the total here. I should update this. You can actually. That's actually something that's not that hard to do. So instead of saying like should show how many.
The number of matches.
Yeah.
Right.
It's insane, man. So.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So back to that. Okay. So. The thing is, so obviously, see, this is the whole CRDT thing, okay? So because it's a CR, because I'm using, I didn't even touch on that, but because like, so I have the whole CRDT thing here, where I'm using Automerge. Like you can just like, there's no, let's say I export this now, I export this tomorrow, I export this in 2 weeks, I export this in 3 months, and then like I send all of these files at once to the same person, and they don't know, oh, which one is version 1, which one is version 3, which one is version. They can merge all 4 of them in, and it's always going to have the same result. Okay, so it's this concept of causal, I think causal eventuality or eventual consistency. I can't remember what the term is, but like you don't like anytime you can sync at any time, and it's just going to bring them into alignment. Okay,
right.
So because of that, like if you want a really naive implementation of this, if you want someone to have access to your team, you just give them the binary file. Okay, obviously that's not great. So how I kind of like set this up is that, and like, okay, so you can, no, I still don't think it's a database. Maybe you can argue there's a server. It's a classic thing of like, it's still a server on someone else's computer, but there's no database. Like, so let's say this periodically like kind of syncs, okay, and it periodically syncs to your Dropbox. I didn't even have time. I think I showed some of that last time, and there's just like a binary file here associated with that team. So let's say this team ABC. And I actually have it. I have it here as a slice. Okay. So this is a team. Effectively, each team is a slice of data, and like this is the key thing when it comes to authentication. Like it's not about authentication. Like you just send people what they have access to. So if you want more on this, what is it? Electric SQL. Electric SQL really kind of like made it click for me the way they explain it. So they sync, electric sync. Yeah, the way they explain it. And it's the same with like, if you think about GraphQL, for example, so in GraphQL, you can always query for anything. You can say, and this is once again, there's a lot of ties here with what initially we wanted to do with GraphQL, but the performance was just like too bad that it wasn't feasible. Where, like, let's say with GraphQL, you say, give me all the users, or give me all the products, or give me all the teams, but you're not added to any teams. You're just going to get an empty array back.
Yes, okay. Quite right.
And it's the same here, where, well, not the same with my infrastructure, but like I think authentication, remember, this isn't about being completely offline. So it's not like you do sync things with the server, but all you're saying is you're just saying, server, give me all the teams that I have access to in the background, okay? And also because of the CRDT thing, you don't need to wait for that to happen before you can start working. That just happens in the background. It doesn't matter. Does it take a minute? Does it take 3 minutes? Does it take 2 seconds? You don't have to worry about latency and speed or whatever. It just syncs in the background, okay? And so, like, let's say you're syncing by like an interval or something, and you get permission to something, like, then it just comes along, and you just do the filtering and transformation or whatever of that collection of data on your side. Okay, but I know this isn't exactly what he asked. So what he asked was specifically around this. So then how do you give people permission? So what I just ended up doing is I'm just using Dropbox's like permissions. So because all of this is a file, there's no database. This is just a binary file. So what the CRDT is effectively, it's a binary file that effectively is just a log of all operations. So the way you would literally just like, who has access to what? They just like, either you physically send them the file, or I just like I just I'm using the Dropbox interface, not the API, to kind of hide this. But all that you're doing is you're just giving someone view access or read access or whatever to that file, edit access or whatever. And you can slice this however you want. I just say, okay, now you have edit access to the entire team. But you can be like, okay, cool. There's a binary file for the members. There's a binary file for this, and then you can grant, like, it's just files. So I think this is the thing is, and this isn't anything specific local first. This is what I ended up doing, is like you don't need, because it's just you're moving the data around. Like you can just like give them access to the data, whether that is by means of emailing it to them manually or sharing it on Dropbox. So obviously, as mentioned, I just using a Dropbox API through the app to kind of fake, oh, you're adding a member. When you add a member to your team, this effectively just gives them access to the URL. Yeah, so like this is very convoluted. And that's just because I wanted to build something crazy that see how far you could get without a database. But I mean, like, I didn't even touch on stuff like WebRTC and whatever. You know, if you do like peer-to-peer stuff, like there's a lot of cool stuff that can happen there. But this also doesn't necessarily even like say that you can't have a server that manages the permissions. Like I would probably, if this is a production app, I would probably have a server that manages the permissions. But that's maybe like all that you use your server for, is just like what you have access to. So the server is actually just exposing these CRDT things for you. So I say that, you know, I'm Schalk. I ask the server, what do I have access to? And it just sends me like those pieces of data, or that CRDT data type. And then I can do with that whatever I want. So yeah, like I mean, like you're still gonna, I think like authentication is less of a problem than people think. It's like it kind of, yeah, it's not that different from, like, remember, the only thing you're really moving to, you're like, you still like, once again, if you were to build this for production, not as like something crazy like I did, you'd probably still have the server, because the role of your server is for syncing. Okay. And a big part of that, like syncing, is what are you allowed to sync? Okay. The big part that you're moving to the front that was previously on the server is the, you know, the transformation of the data, the querying of the data, the modification of the data, the mutation of the data. Because now you're just replicating, because you're basically just replicating. So all, like, the question is just like, what are you allowed to replicate? So that doesn't really change. It's just like you don't send up to the server a request to do the stuff and send you the result of that down. The only, yeah, like, so your server is actually, I would probably say then things like permissions and who has access to what is more pronounced, because that's then the primary purpose of the server. Actually, it's just like determining what data you have access to and sending you that data. But then there are going to be some long running things, like, let's say there's like a really expensive process, like, let's say, you know, convert, like, let's say I want to export I want to like generate some, I don't know, massive PDF file with all the tasks. Probably don't want to do that on my local machine. So like that type of stuff you still send to the server, but your general, like, kind of querying the data, working with the data, whatever, like that, you just do on the device. But there's some like big complex computational stuff that you can still, it's not getting rid of the server, it's like using the server for stuff that you can't do locally, which is like, you know, syncing data and like big computational stuff. Yeah. Okay,
Right.
I hope that was useful. Like as
Yes,
mentioned, like
it was
obviously
great.
the talk that I'm going to do on this is. Oh, geez, Justin.
Sorry, I
It's
clicked the
obviously going to be
wrong. I clicked the wrong button.
It's going to be way more condensed and like just way more straightforward. I'm not going to dive because I don't have an hour and a
Yeah.
half, three sessions of an hour and a half to go over some of my thoughts on this. So, yeah, I hope some of this is useful to someone. At the very least, it's just been a really great experience for me, kind of just making sense of
Yeah.
this mess that is local first at this point.
No, these sessions have been great, Schalk. Really,
yeah.
really
Let me maybe like end with that, like and this is like I mentioned this last time, but so this is the guy from Roki Corp. They do zero sync, and he like said people ask me a lot about this. I try to do a video and I'm too perfectionistic to publish it, which I clearly don't have a problem with. So I'm going to try this format. Here's how I think about the local first sync space. First, it's definitely a big, beautiful art mess. There's so much energy and excitement in the space and nothing has congealed yet. All kinds of incredibly smart people doing fascinating work. But anyway, here goes nothing. So read his thing if you want. Like, it's really insightful. It's like a massive multi-tweet thing. But, like it's that acknowledgement that it's like, it's this massive space. It's like this hot mess and people are trying to figure out what this thing is. But it's very exciting. It's like the early days of JavaScript frameworks.
Yeah.
All right.
Great.
Okay. You can head off.
Right.
You are released. And then...
Thank you so much, Schalk.
Yes, I will hopefully chat to you soon, Justin. And everyone else.
Yeah. And everyone, if you are at DevConf, make sure to say hi. Go to Schalk's talk as well. But yeah, come by the Fetzer stand and pick up a sticker and have a chat.
Yes.
It would be great to meet our online viewers, if possible.
Come say hi.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Schalk.
All right. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.